One, go see a sports psychologist. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
don't wait until you want to do it as a profession. Go see one. Um, and I think the second would be like, don't be afraid to fail.
Mm.
Like, failure is good. You learn, you grow, and every failure makes you better and stronger.
Welcome to the Elev8 podcast. I am your host and coach, Tyler Johnson. Thank you for tuning in. And whether you've tuned in to elevate your mindset, your game, or just your day, you're in the right place. My guest this episode is a former Division I basketball player, now a mental performance consultant, and the director of mental performance for GameChanger Athletes, as well as her consulting company, GOAT Mentality. You can find her on social media linked up here. Welcome to the Elev8 podcast, Bianca Latham. Bianca, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am well. Thank you for joining us. Excited to have you join. I guess to start, love just to learn a little bit more about you and what led you into mental performance work that you do now.
Yeah, so I'll go with the short story. The short story is my mother was in psychology. She's in the field of psychology. So growing up, she used to like do assessments and stuff on me. So it was always something that I was intrigued by was the field of psychology. But I also love sports. And so surprisingly, in the seventh grade, I was like, this is the career I'm going to go towards. And so, yeah, that's what kind of started it. But after going to college and playing sports myself, I was a Division I athlete, also played professional. So I have like that background of like knowing like what it took as an athlete to play at an elite level, and then navigating my own mental hurdles. It even more propelled me to join the field.
For sure. I think my student athlete struggles have a lot of reflections, but as you look upon on that student athlete experience, what were some of the mental skills that maybe that time helped you forge or develop, that you really kind of reflect upon?
Yeah, so obviously I had no idea that I was using mental skills at the time, but
Sure.
visualization was really key for me. That was something that when I was in high school, the entire team did it. We didn't really, yeah, again, I didn't know I was using visualization, but we would hype ourselves up as a way to get us motivated, but then calm ourselves down.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize I was doing like my own little breathing work, but I was doing some breath work, but also visualizing what success looked like. And then also I tore my ACL my junior year. And so I used a lot of mental skills to help me like recover and come back, especially to overcome my personal fears of like re-injuring. And so, yeah, using some positive self-talk and visualizing again. So yeah,
Talk
those are.
about like you brought up the mental skills with the injury, because I think we're finding out in research that how the mental skills can accelerate our rehab.
Mhm.
Can you talk about some of the things that you maybe did visualizing that maybe helped you in that process? Because when I was in rehab, and I know other athletes, it kind of is a bummer.
Yeah.
You're losing some of your daily routine. But what were some of the mental skills that helped you in recovery?
So again, I'm gonna go back to visualization, and I will say goal setting. I know it seems like simple and like it's not a mental skill, but like having a goal to work towards really like helped me, I don't know, focus on that versus where I was at. I was focusing on where I wanted to be. And then visualizing like how I would move when I came back, like
Mhm.
how I wanted to move. I that really, yeah, that really assisted me as well.
Yeah, I love it. You can talk about visualization all you want. We love it on this podcast. So I think I was the same as an athlete. I was doing some of it, but I didn't really know how. I didn't know,
Yeah.
how to kind of, use my senses and tap into all the things that kind of help us in that process.
Mhm.
Uh, on the flip side, when athletes are kind of, you know, for me, it was, I think, kind of the first little like touch of maybe, oh, that's what depression is. When I was away from my teammates, I was not 100%, and walking to class was slow and those kind of things. What can athletes or teammates do to kind of help other athletes that are kind of going through that rehab process? Because we usually all have one or a couple on our team that are going through that.
Yeah, so definitely I would say check in with them. Ask them about their goals and how they can support them in their recovery, and still incorporate them in team activities. Hey, the team is doing this. Hey, what's the practice that you'll be at? We need help with this. Helping them define like a new role, while still participating in the team, especially if it's like a season ending injury.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then also while they're on the bench, engage with them. What are you seeing that we don't see?
Yeah.
Like different things like that to still make sure that they're part of the team. And yeah, so
I like that, asking, get some feedback from them, right? And to get a new
yeah.
vantage point. You brought up goal setting. It was one of the things I wanted to ask you about. I think that injury process rehab is slow and tedious, but for me, it taught you to kind of think small. What can I do by Friday? What can I do by next Friday? What do you see some athletes get wrong about goal setting, and how can they be better at it?
Definitely whether it's injury or just a goal in general, they think of like outcome goal, like, oh, I want to win the championship. And they're not really thinking of the process goal of here's what it's going to take for me to get that. The actions specifically. I know, well, I shouldn't say I know. A lot of people are familiar with SMART goals, specific, measurable. I know a lot of people say attainable. I say action oriented, and then realistic and time bound. But that action part, that's the part that a lot of athletes are missing, is what action is it going to take for me to successfully accomplish this goal, and how can I incorporate that action to make it a habit,
Yeah,
and part of my routine. So
definitely.
yeah,
I'm big on the measurement part. Like,
yeah,
I think there's when you measure, it gives you something also to reflect on. And I
yeah,
think, whether it's rehab or just your growth and development, like, oh, like that's how far I came since I was a sophomore. Um,
yeah.
it is, where do you like to bring in, or maybe something you did as an athlete or with your people you work with, journaling? How do you feel where do you feel about journaling and its effectiveness to be an outlet for athletes?
So I'll be very candid. I when I was in college, one of my coaches, she told us during the summer she wanted us to journal. I never did it. I wish I did, because now I use it in my daily life to journal. And I do recommend it to my athletes, especially I have this kind of I recent or I shouldn't say recently, but I posted on social media, like, the jumbo, when it's up here, you can put it on a piece of paper and then you have a clear mind. And so I definitely recommend just journaling to like get your thoughts out. But also to be able to reflect on and to look back to say, oh, this is what I was thinking when I was resilient, and I'm not thinking that anymore. Or this was just completely incoherent. I don't know what I was thinking when I was upset about this. And now that I'm thinking with a clear mind, I can see like, here's where I was wrong. And here's how I can make improvement and move forward. So I use it in my daily life, and I wish I used it as an athlete. And I do recommend it to my athletes. Essentially, that's my
Me too.
summary.
I think when I ask athletes too, I think they get told or graded or judged on their English writing skills.
Mm-hmm.
That becomes like this little like barrier to doing it, and it's like, well, they don't have to grade it. They don't have to judge it. That's the best part. But I think that was the
Yeah.
thing for me. I felt like I was never told, you're not good at writing, you're not good at English. So I was like, well, why would I spend time doing that? But is there any kind of like patterns or reflections or little things that you like to bring in your journaling, or that maybe through time have been kind of effective tools?
So there's not any one particular question that I know sometimes I what I say is like, what is on your mind that you can't let go?
Mhm.
Throw that onto the piece of paper. Um, what's something that went well? I'll have people journal. My perfectionists who are like constantly thinking of everything they did wrong, I want you to journal everything that went well. What is it that you want to see in the future? Talk to your future self and journal to that person. I've had There's a lot. I have kind of random prompts. I have a list of prompts that are not in my face, but I do usually pose a question, or I'll just say this is a like a mind dump. Whatever comes to your mind, that is exactly what you're writing. If it's random, it doesn't matter. Just throw it on the paper.
Yeah, I think one of our other guests, she called it raw unfiltered thoughts. Just yeah, just
Yeah.
just call it write a rut. She calls it, right?
Right or
Like
okay.
write a
Never heard
rut,
that, but
raw
I like that.
unfiltered thoughts. Same thing you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Um, is there I saw you smile when we just talked about kind of the rut, the mental skills and teaching.
Yeah. No,
Um,
I like that. Writing rough. Kind of
what
rhyme.
what else? What brings you joy in helping people with mental skills and performance? What brings you most joy?
Um, I think what brings me the most joy, I'll say, is like seeing an athlete like overcome and like use whatever mental skill to like overcome a hurdle and become that best version of themselves. Um, that for me is one of the most things that I enjoy, or receive gratification from. But just in general with mental skills, I just enjoy the interactions of working with athletes. I really coaching is something that I would enjoy doing, but I just don't have the availability to be in the gym all the time. And this was like that happy medium to where I'm in the gym with them, but I'm not like fully submerged uh
Yeah, yeah.
with the athletes. But yeah.
Yeah, the X's and O's, I want to
Yeah.
deal with the people. Um, was there, you talked about overcoming your injury, but was there something else during your career as an athlete that you're proud of that you overcame, or adversities that looking back, they kind of stunk, but you're glad they were there?
Hmm. I'm trying to think besides my ACL, something that stunk. Um, I mean, I had some situations that stunk that I just it took me a long time to get over. Um, but hmm, let's circle back to that question.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
circle
so
back.
you're good. You're good. I think another big thing, that we always like to talk about is the importance of our belief, our self-efficacy, and our belief in ourselves. How do you see that as a role in an athlete, and how can athletes that maybe don't feel confident or feel that belief help themselves cultivate or build it?
So yeah, confidence is definitely something that I've been encountering with athletes a lot, like struggling with it. And I think one of the first things that I tell them is, um, like, it's not uh, a linear where, confidence is always supposed to be high. It is a roller coaster, and it goes up, it goes down, it goes up and goes down. But one of the things that I tell them is, what in your habits, like what in your routine are you doing to consistently boost your confidence? Because confidence is just like a muscle, in my opinion. It's like if you do one push up, I know you're not expecting to be like, oh, I got physically stronger, right? When you're in the weight room or when you're doing conditioning, it's something that it's part of your routine. It's something that you're consistently doing. And so, figuring out what is it that brings me confidence, and then how am I incorporating that into my daily or weekly routine so that I can maintain confidence, and then again understanding that it's a roller coaster, and instead of looking at a roller coaster as something negative, I mean, we get on roller coasters and we have fun. So how can you have fun with the highs and the lows and learning from it? So yeah.
Yep. Someone once they said maybe when that confidence, we've all probably been not confident and played okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and we probably felt
Yeah.
confident and not played well.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that making sure we have those juxtapositions, and like you said, routine. And I think I deal with a lot of football players, so when we talk self-talk, you get a lot of eye rolls right away.
Yeah.
But once you kind of utilize and tap into that mantra, self-talk power, are there ways that you like to coach it or help people identify on how it's going to be effective for them? Because it does have a personification to it, I think.
Yeah, so sometimes when I'm introducing it, I'll use it more like affirmations, where I'll say, so what's an affirmation that you can say to yourself? Or I may pose it as to, what's a reoccurring thought that you have? How can we challenge it? Or what's a positive one that came to your mind when you were performing well? How can you incorporate that into your routine so you continuously do that, or say that? I mean, so yeah, those are some of the ways that I do that.
If I gave you a magic wand and you could, those gyms and those coaches we were talking about, if I gave you a magic wand, you could wave it and change one thing about uh, the way coaches coach athletes, what would it be?
Hmm. There's a lot. Um,
It's your
one
magic
thing that
wand,
I
so if there's more than one, it's okay.
so I think one of the main things that I would like them to change is to stop comparing um how things were in the past to how they are now. One of the things that I tell a lot of coaches is really it's a reflection of you and your ability to evolve. The way that you coached back then is not the way it is now. So how are you going to make the adjustment so that you can pull out the best out of these athletes instead of, they just don't make them like they used to anymore. Y'all are, mental marshmallows or, whatever the case
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
And I think the second thing I would say is sending athletes to me once things have broken down, and treating mental skills like it's negative, or like something's wrong with you instead of
right,
just incorporating it into like the routine or boosting it up the same
right.
way you do conditioning or physical training.
Yep.
So yeah.
And I think it's interesting, the people I've interviewed at schools or places that have a wealth of resources, and mental training is one of just parts of the routine. That's the athletes. It's just, I went to mental training, I went to practice, I went to rehab.
Yeah.
It's part of what they do, and what, some places they're trying to cultivate. But
Yeah.
there's also, let's acknowledge that gap, right? There's a big, I think, gap in just psychological resources in our country,
Yeah.
and then access to them. And then, in sports, I think you kind of brought, there's this element of, well, if
Stigma.
I go and talk to them, I'm damaged goods, as an athlete once had told
Hmm.
me, and it's just like, it might just be like a little sprain, and not a require surgery. But how do you see, or some ways that we can kind of close that kind of gap of psychological resources in sport, in the country, wherever you want to go?
Um, how can we close the gap on resources? One, I definitely think training people because there are I feel as though it could be beneficial to have coaches have that training, so that they can just incorporate it into their routines because they're
Yeah.
underfunded. But here are some things that you can use. Um, Definitely making it a priority to I know mental health is becoming more of a priority, but sometimes when you use a mental skills coach, we could be that buffer, to recognize when they need assistance and also just help them alleviate it faster before it gets to depression or whatever something severe case is. And so yeah, that's what I would say is, but it has to be valued from the top down because
Yeah.
if the higher up administrations aren't funding it or they don't care about it, or even the coaches, if it doesn't matter to the coaches, it's not going to matter to the players.
Most
So
definitely.
yeah.
I do think, yeah, that coach buy-in is critical. I think we've met a lot of people where they're almost contradicting the person that they brought in to help their team.
Yeah.
And so it has to be, I think, a collaborative uh, system. Um,
Hmm.
Flashing back, if you were to get in a time machine and go visit 16 years before this question, I want to ask your mom's experiments at home. Do
Hmm.
you do you remember any of them? And is there
um
any like silly one that you're like, oh, I actually used that today?
so I wouldn't say that there's one that I use today, an assessment, but I one of the most vivid ones that I have was where she would put up two different, and I can't think of the name of the assessment off the top of my head right now, but she would show two different, you know, it'd be the same image, but something would be missing from the other, and I would have to identify what it was. And I remember being like, I gotta get this right. I gotta get this right. but I'd get it wrong. She'd be like, "You don't notice anything?" And I say, "No, they're the same." And then she'd be like, "Oh, it's missing eyebrows." And I'd be like, "Ah, you know." But I was a kid, and it helped me become a little more aware of things as well. But that was, for me, it was just like a game, doing that
Right.
particular assessment at
Yeah.
such a young age. So yeah.
Yeah. I remember looking, I was never really good at those pictures. Finding Waldo, wasn't good at that. I don't
Yeah.
know, you know. But the question I wanted to close this out with, if you could get in a time machine, with the things you've learned along your journey and experiences, if you could go see 16-year-old you and give yourself some advice, what would you want to go tell 16-year-old self?
Hmm. 16-year-old self was when I tore my ACL.
Mm,
Um, hmm. It's a good question. There's probably a lot that I would say. One, go see a sports psychologist. Um,
yeah, yeah.
don't wait until you want to do it as a profession. Go see one. Um, and I think the second would be like, don't be afraid to fail.
Mm.
Like, failure is good. You learn, you grow, and every failure makes you better and stronger. And so that would be one thing that I would tell my younger self.
So the adversity, we mentioned it before, but coming
Mhm.
back to, the adversity and the struggles that we go through that kind of create our strength. Looking back, um, are there some of those kind of struggles that you reflect upon that you were glad were there?
Yeah. So one, now all of these definitely relate to sports. And I'll say twofold. I'll say, or maybe three. This all happened in college. Um, so I went from losing 11 games in my entire high school career to being 500 and then winning only 7 games. And so that was very difficult for me to navigate. But today I'm so thankful for it because it did help me become resilient and still focus and push through and work hard. Um, and then I also was navigating, uh, coaches that weren't as supportive.
Mm.
And I didn't quit, and I have nothing against these athletes who are transferring now. I would have did it in a heartbeat if I had the opportunity,
Mm.
but I gutted it out and was able to just stay there for 4 years and then transition to a new coaching staff, and be kind of renewed in my spirit to still love the game of basketball that I was playing. And so it was a challenging time, but I wouldn't trade it. So it was it's helped me to this day. So yeah.
That's great. Um, that was great to hear. Now let's talk about GOAT, GOAT mentality. It's on your Instagram. It's linked up in the show notes. Go follow. Um, but what does GOAT mentality mean to you?
Yeah, so goat mentality, when I was coming up with like a business model of what I wanted the name to be, and I came up with all these other names that were already taken. And I was thinking like, well, when I think about mental skills, what is it? And I feel like it's some of the greatest of all time have these type of mentality and they use mental skills. And so I did create an acronym for GOAT, which is growth mindset, which is, I notice all the goats have it. They're constantly thinking, how can I grow? How can I evolve? What can I do better? Um, so the G is for growth mindset. The O is for overcoming obstacles. And then also just looking at things from what is my opportunity here? When challenges come up, they're not running away. They're looking at what's the opportunity. Um, and then the A is to adapt and be able to adjust. I notice the goats. That's what they do, and that's something that mental skills, is required. You have to have that ability to adjust and make and adapt to different situations. And then the T for trust in the process. Uh, yeah, the T is for trust in the process. And the quote that I love to say is, "The day you plant the seed, it's not the day you eat the fruit." And so you got to trust the process. You have to just continue to put in the work, continue to grow and evolve, and trust that you're gonna reap the fruits of the benefits of that fruit. So yeah, that's what GOAT kind of means, and having that mentality and yeah, using mental skills so that you can become not only like the GOAT in your prospective sport, but like the best person and best version of yourself that you can be. So a GOAT for yourself. For me, it's Bianca 5.0, 6.0. How can I just continue to become that better version of myself? So that's what GOAT mentality is.